Thank you, Deborah. Many people are surprised by how honest I am. This statement always makes me a little uneasy. Why not be honest? I think to myself, tell the emotion, the thought, the utter truth. Lying just prolongs the truth surfacing. This is part of my story. This is my truth. As I felt it, heard it, and remember it. This is part of me. My name is Renda. The last name doesn't matter. It never has. I wear glasses, have short brown hair, I'm about 5'2", and around 175 pounds. I've battled major depression since I was a teenager. I've been married for 6 years. Not to the man of my dreams, just to a man. We have 3 children, a girl who's 4 years old, and our boys are 2 and 1. We live in a raised ranch on a private lot with 3 dogs and a minivan. The American dream. The last year or so, my husband slept on the couch. One evening, I had enough of not sharing a bed with him. To me, it was bad enough. In 6 years, we only shared a blanket intermittently. I walked into the living room and I told him if he was not going to share a bed with me, then he should find another place to sleep. He looked at me, angry, and said, okay. He got up and slammed the door and left. I couldn't believe it. No fighting, no talking, nothing but a simple, okay, and he was out the door. We have 3 children sleeping in their rooms. I ran out onto the deck and screamed as loud as I could. I cried and I melted to the ground. For our anniversary, I was served the divorce papers. I drank glass after glass of wine while I filled them out. Of course I filled them out. My husband do paperwork? Yeah, right. I lost about 60 pounds. I began to focus on what I could. Work, school, friends, movies, and drinking. The foreclosure notice arrived. My ex-husband had stopped paying the mortgage, as was court ordered. I couldn't make sense of all this. All I could feel was failure. I was barely able to take care of myself and my children. Now I was a sitting duck, waiting for the sheriff to serve us an eviction notice. I knew I had lost our family home, and there was nothing I could do to change it. Defeated, I moved into a 3-bedroom apartment with my 3 kids and a roommate. Life quickly became very toxic. At this point, I had a boyfriend living with us. My roommate also had a boyfriend living with us. My 3 kids were sharing a small bedroom. We entertained couch surfers and had additional roommates floating in and out. I did what I could to get through the days, take care of my children, attend school full-time, and work part-time. Then the eviction notice arrived. My choices became clear. Live in my car with my 3 children, or accept the opportunity given from my mother, something I dreaded, and rent her home. I chose the latter for the sake of my children, and I felt so deeply that I had failed as an adult. We moved over Christmas. My mother gave my boyfriend and I 6 months to find jobs and cover our bills, or she would evict us. The house became haunted with ill feelings. It didn't help that my childhood home faced the home of the man who sexually abused me as a teenager. And my boyfriend would yell at me constantly, telling me how bad I smelled. He would get angry at me for going out with my friends, when all he wanted to do was stay cooped up in a black hole of drugs and alcohol. His jealousy and paranoia with everything caused my insecurities to surface. I started hearing voices again, as I did when my depression set in. Not commanding voices, but background noises of voices talking, creating a paranoia in myself and validating how much I have failed in life. My kids hated me. My second grader was truant, as she would physically fight with me in the mornings, not wanting to go to school. She would also tear things off the walls in fits of rage. My youngest, barely 2, cute little cherub with those chubby cheeks, would look at me and say, "I hate you, Mommy. I want Daddy." I was an empty shell, just floating through the days. My children would tell me almost daily that they didn't want to be here with me, mostly because they did want their father. He was the fun one. I was the one saddled with the week's schedule of bedtimes, homework, and all the other parenting responsibilities that arose. Their father only had them on weekends. No bedtimes, just fun and freedom. I was crying daily over everything and nothing. And late one night, after my boyfriend decided again that our relationship wouldn't last, we fought. I decided to sleep in my daughter's room, and while I was lying there, I thought how much better it would be for everyone if I were gone. My mother would be happier. My mother would be happier because she would get her house back. My kids would be happier because they would live with their father. And my boyfriend would have his life to live as he chose. It is settled. I felt at peace, knowing I could do something to help those I loved so much. This was the most considerate thing that I had control over to truly help my family. And an utter calm came over me. My boyfriend came into my daughter's room to yell at me some more. I got up calmly and started to tell him my plan. I was certain of it, tranquil even, and he became scared. He made some phone calls and then said that we were going to the hospital. I talked with a triage nurse, another nurse, a counselor, a doctor. The doctor said they would give me a choice to ride in the ambulance or to find a ride to the psych hospital. The counselor came back and said, "There's no choice. I have to ride in the ambulance. I am too high risk." Once admitted into the hospital, I continued crying and sleeping for a day and a half. Finally, I got up and attended a group meeting. Then I lost myself in a drawing. People called, but they were all unsure of what to say. There were many awkward silences on the other end of the line. I was comfortable in the hospital. I could have stayed forever. When I couldn't stop the tears, I could just lie down. When I needed medications, someone would dispense them for me at scheduled times. All I had to do was stand in line. I didn't need to feel anything anymore, and being numb was safe. An abrupt phone call from my boyfriend shook me from this dazed state I was in. I had to go home for my kids. My mother had kicked my boyfriend out of the house and taken over caring for my children as she was getting frustrated. So after my discharge, I tried to keep my bearings as I returned to a life that I mentally left. My relationship ended. I started therapy again, weekly or twice a week when I needed it. I was able to talk with 4 close friends who became my support. I gave them all copies of my wellness recovery action plan. I also wanted to connect with people who struggle like me. I have become active in the Out of the Darkness walks, raising money for awareness and prevention. My children became my priority and my lifeline. I still cry many times a week. We found a code name for this, a moment. And they learned to ask if there was a reason why I was crying, or if it was just a moment that Mama needed to get through. We have a wonderful relationship now. This all happened in 2010. Since then, I have been seeing a therapist regularly. I work with my doctors who manage my medications. I work with therapists to learn different coping skills. And I've done many outpatient programs to understand more about how to manage my depression and suicidal ideations. I've had 2 more hospitalizations in the past 10 years. But each time I spiral, I try to learn from it. I use my schooling as a fine artist to convey emotions into visual works of art. And I recently rediscovered my love of performing in live theater, which brought me here. I also try to share my experiences so that others who are struggling like me know they're not alone. Thank you. And now, introducing Jay Fitchalker to share his story of the beauty in breaking open.